Hi, what's your name, darling?
My name is Susan Boyle.
Okay, and who would you like to be as successful as?
Elaine Page.
Over the years, Britain's Got Talent has managed to produce iconic singers, but none quite as legendary as Susan Boyle. Back in 2009, the 47-year-old managed to wow the judges with a fiercely beautiful performance, one that remains memorable to this day. Over a decade later, we can't help but wonder how the ambitious singer is doing today. So without further ado, let's take a look at what really happened to Susan Boyle.
Without a doubt, that was the biggest surprise I have had in 3 years on this show.
Unlike a lot of popular artists, Susan has not led a particularly easy life. In fact, she was bullied for most of her childhood for having autism, although at the time it was assumed to be brain damage. This was believed at the time because when Susan was born, she lost a fair bit of oxygen for a prolonged period of time. Of course, we know she was pushing 50 when she decided to audition for Britain's Got Talent with a rendition of I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables that left everyone in the room speechless. But did you know that she's always been interested in music? In fact, she'd auditioned and submitted demos for multiple other opportunities before BGT to showcase her incredible talent, but unfortunately, she was rejected for almost every one of those. Her decision to enter the third season of the show was because it was a late mother's wish. At the time, she was unemployed, living alone with her cat Pebbles, and doing volunteer work for several organizations. But we imagine even she would admit it to all be worth it, given how getting that standing ovation did a 180 on her musical career. Over 100 million people watched her audition online within just a few days of it being uploaded. But despite all this, she placed second in the final competition, losing out to dance group Diversity. Not that that has prevented her from signing with a huge record label and giving us consistent hits like Wonderful World. Her debut album went on to become one of the UK's best-selling albums of all time. If you're wondering, Susan is still signed onto Simon Cowell's record label Psycho, the same label that produced musical wonders like One Direction and Little Mix, to name a few. Now 60, the artist has released 8 albums in the last 11 years and has toured the world. Most recently, she ended her 10 tour in the UK when the pandemic had us all locked up in our homes for almost 2 years. But rest assured, Susan's more eager than ever to start touring again. Long gone is the shy Scottish singer we saw way back on Britain's Got Talent, since today Susan Boyle seems to have absolute confidence in her talent. Susan Boyle's story has resonated with so many people over the years, and yet we haven't heard much from her after the pandemic. So far, all we know about that is how she had to cancel her 10 tour midway and isolate herself for being more susceptible to the virus. This is because she's a type 2 diabetic, and even if that were not the case, having concerts while a pandemic is raging on would be way too difficult to manage. And believe it or not, Susan has zero intention to retire anytime soon. After all, she did say that she wanted to emulate Elaine Page and sing until she was 70. At her audition, this included chuckles within the audience, and many even disregarded her. That is, as we all remember, until she started singing.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
One of the things Susan did recently is announce her return on Instagram to all her followers in November of 2021. The caption read, "Susan is back on the telly. Catch her cameo on @BBC River City on Monday," accompanied with an adorable picture of Susan herself holding the clapperboard with the rest of the cast stood behind her. This was an especially welcoming post since around this time in 2022, there were rumors that she would end up performing consistent shows in Las Vegas, but that turned out to be false news. Along with inspiring people not to give up on their dreams and talents, no matter how bleak the future may seem, the now 60-year-old flourishes in the same town she grew up in. In fact, the singer still thrives in a family home in Blackburn, West Lothian, back in Scotland. In 2022, her net worth is easily estimated to be around $40 million US, and you might be wondering what she's done with all that wealth she's come to. Recently, Irish Mirror featured the artist as she showed off her childhood home after being renovated, and that also explained her sort of long hiatus after the pandemic. Despite living in the same house for over 6 decades and being rich enough to buy multiple other houses wherever she desires, the star chose to revamp her childhood home because of all the stories it carries. She claimed that it has to do with the memories of your house and your upbringing. Simply put to her, understanding and analyzing where her true roots lay was a big part of why she originally wanted to keep the place. And you would not believe us when we tell you that the first thing Susan did with her very first check was purchase the council house from her childhood, also she could keep living in the same house she grew up in. When touring the dressing room, she spoke a bit about her family as well. She recalled how there was history attached to the house. The council house is assumed to have set her back a hefty £110,000, which in hindsight seems like a small price to pay for preserving nostalgia. Also, when you have millions at your disposal, we'd assume it wouldn't be a big monetary concern as well. She claimed that she thought it best to be grounded and with your roots. Being familiar with her own past has apparently even prevented her from saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. The singer, despite gaining almost overnight fame, apparently hasn't changed much, and that much is evident from the way she recently redecorated her home. The house features furnishings that are modern and sophisticated, all while also displaying a plethora of Jesus Christ ornaments right in a piano room. Her faith seems extraordinarily important to her, as a picture of her and the Pope is also tacked on a wall, alongside pictures of her with her parents. While a lot of her family has passed away, Susan continues to make them proud in a house that displays just how important all of them were to her. While the artist is not married and devoted herself to her career entirely, you can clearly see speckles of nostalgia strewn about her house, making it seem homely and simultaneously reminding you of her superstar status. She once told Piers Morgan that she lives off a humble £300 to £500 weekly allowance to keep her going. In the past, she's opened up on a few things besides her house that she splurged on, and the list is charmingly small. She spent her large amount of wealth on a fur coat, a bike, a piano, and some driving lessons. Singers, especially female singers, are often not taken seriously as artists if they're overweight or aren't deemed to be attractive. This year, Susan Boyle has not announced any new music, but has still been part of news stories and has been turning heads her way. That is because the stunning musician has seemingly lost an insane amount of weight since the last time we saw her. An estimated 50 pounds apparently has been shed on a weight loss journey. The singer has been bullied about her weight since her childhood, but it wasn't until she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes that she started to live a healthier lifestyle. Such a diagnosis would be a wake-up call for most people, and it seems as though Susan was no different. Apparently, she's spoken about how exactly she started living healthier, and there are 3 aspects to it. The first was to eat healthier. You see, removing sugar from one's diet is no easy feat, but if the alternative is high blood pressure and near-death experiences, we'd imagine it'd be doable. In an interview with The Mirror, Susan said that she needed to stop eating sweets and cakes. "It's the bane of my life," she said. She also started working out and taking Garcinia cambogia supplements, which apparently suppress appetite and burn fat. And we have to admire the fact that she lost weight for herself, and to make the most of her life, something she would not have been able to do with her weight being what it was at the time of her diagnosis. She said that she did not care about the way she looked or her image in the public, which is impressive considering the amount of eyeballs on her. It's easy to assume that she's done leaving her mark on the world, given how much she's achieved in such a short time. But as it stands, Susan seems to be nowhere near close to retirement, and that's something to be exceptionally grateful about.